In the dim afterglow of his monitor, Ethan Mercer had always believed he understood the boundaries of the internet. What was safe, what was rumor, and what was myth, but everything he thought he knew shattered the night a friend sent him a link to a nameless Onion site buried far beneath the usual deep web layers, hidden behind multiple VPNs, Tor routes, and a cluster of warning messages that would have scared any rational person away. But curiosity was the one thing Ethan had never managed to restrain. So he clicked through with a half-excited grin, expecting the same old unsettling but harmless pages he'd browsed before. Low-resolution images, bizarre forums, encrypted chat lobbies filled with people pretending to be hackers, occultists, or professional criminals, nothing he hadn't seen before, but instead, the site led him to a black screen with a single blinking line of red text that said, "We've been waiting, Ethan." His stomach twisted so sharply he felt it in his throat, because he hadn't logged in, hadn't typed anything, hadn't given the site anything that could identify him, and yet it knew his name, and as he stared frozen, unable to look away, a distorted humming began playing through his headphones, rising and falling like someone whispering directly into his brain, and then the screen flickered, revealing a paused video with a timestamp reading 0 o'clock, titled in jagged white letters, "Watching you. Do not look away." Ethan laughed nervously at first, trying to convince himself it was some kind of prank, some browser exploit that accessed his device's username or cached data, but deep down he knew that wasn't possible. He had set everything up properly, he had scrubbed his metadata. He had used an air-gapped machine, and nothing short of deliberate targeting should have made that message appear so reluctantly. With a pulse hammering so hard he felt it rattling his ribs, he pressed play. The video began with static that sounded almost like ragged breathing, then shifted into a dark room lit only by a single swinging light bulb, and beneath its pale cone of light stood a figure wrapped in something between tattered cloth and human skin, its face hidden behind a mask made of old CRT monitor fragments patched together with wires that twitched like veins, and though Ethan could not see its eyes, he felt its stare like nails scraping across the inside of his skull. Then a low voice crawled through the speakers. "Ethan Mercer, born June 4th, 23 minutes past midnight. Son of Daniel and Lydia, you're still watching." Ethan shot out of his chair, slamming his back into the wall, heart pounding like a trapped animal. Because the machine he was using had no connection to anything carrying personal info, no saved emails, no synced accounts, no storage data, and yet the voice recited those details with chilling accuracy. And as the video continued, it displayed footage that should have been impossible. Grainy clips of Ethan at age 6, feeding ducks by the lake with his mother. A shaky phone recording from a middle school classroom where he'd given a presentation about wanting to be an engineer. Still images of him sleeping in his own bed just last week, mouth slightly open, blankets half kicked off, timestamped at 3:14 a.m., filmed from an angle that implied the camera had been inches from his face. Ethan grabbed the power cable and yanked it out, but the screen stayed on, humming darker. The video continuing smoothly as though powered by something deeper, something hungrier. And then the masked figure leaned closer to the camera until its jagged fragments filled the screen and whispered, "Don't bother, Ethan. We're already inside." Ethan scrambled toward the door, but as he reached for the knob, it turned by itself, locking with a violent metallic click. The lights flickered, dimmed, and died, leaving him alone in darkness except for the cold blue glow of the monitor that refused to shut off, illuminating the room in jagged shadows as the voice resumed, now sounding like it came from behind him instead of the speakers, whispering his name over and over, sometimes calm, sometimes frantic, sometimes mimicking his own voice as though rehearsing how to speak through his mouth. He spun around, clawing at the air, desperate to locate the source. But nothing was there, and yet he felt breath on his neck, slow and unnatural, as though something enormous and hollow were standing inches behind him. Then the video cut to a new scene. Live footage of Ethan's room from the ceiling corner, showing him frozen in place, shown from a vantage point where no camera should have existed. And the masked figure appeared behind him, on screen, its hand, if it could be called that, lifting toward his shoulder, and before Ethan could process what he was seeing, he felt that same cold, electric touch graze his real shoulder. He screamed, but the sound came out muffled, swallowed by the oppressive darkness pressing in around him. And then the screen displayed text in blood like red, "You shouldn't have looked." Suddenly the door swung open by itself, revealing a long hallway that wasn't part of his house, a corridor lined with flickering fluorescent lights stretching impossibly far like a maze designed only for him, and a whisper slithered into his ears, "Walk." Whether hypnotized, terrified, or controlled, Ethan stepped forward, expecting to find a wall or illusion, but instead his foot crossed into a place that smelled of damp metal, chemicals, and old blood, and as he entered, the door slammed shut behind him, vanishing completely as if it had never existed. The monitor from his room now floated in the hallway ahead, glowing softly like bait, showing him new images of other people, dozens of them, sitting hypnotized in front of similar screens, eyes hollow, expressions numb as the masked creature stood behind each one, whispering unheard horrors into their ears. Ethan moved slowly, each step echoing far too loudly in the endless corridor, and the further he went, the more the walls began to pulse like something alive, veins glowing faint red beneath the surface, and the whispers grew louder, overlapping until they formed words. We watch, we learn, we take. The corridor then widened into a vast chamber filled with hundreds of old monitors, arranged in spirals like a cathedral of surveillance. Each screen displaying someone's life from birth to their final moments, some showing ordinary people, others famous faces, and a few showing individuals who seemed to notice the camera, screaming silently as something dragged them out of frame. In the center of the chamber stood the masked figure, taller now, its wires spreading like roots across the floor, each tendril plugged into a monitor like an umbilical cord feeding on human memories. Ethan tried to run, but the floor rippled under him like liquid tar, trapping his feet, pulling him closer as the screens flickered to form a single massive image of his own terrified face. The creature extended an exposed wire toward his temple, whispering, "Your story adds to ours." Ethan clawed at the air, screaming louder than he ever had in his life, but the sound died instantly as the wire touched his skin, sending a shock of cold fire through his nerves. And in an instant his mind flooded with every memory he had ever forgotten. Childhood nightmares, lost days, moments he had forced himself not to think about all pulled violently from him as the screens around the chamber updated. Each one now showing a new video titled, Ethan Mercer Archive 001. His body collapsed lifeless and empty while something that looked like him slowly stood up, eyes hollow, expression blank, breathing steady but wrong, and the creature whispered through him, "Next viewer found." And somewhere above, in the world still unaware of what lived in the deepest shadows of the web, another unsuspecting user received a nameless link in a midnight message, already marked with a whisper only Ethan could hear from inside the screen now. "We've been waiting for you."